Good afternoon. Welcome to our celebration of Gail's well-lived life. Most of you know me. I'm Bernadette, Gail's kid sister, and I've known him longer than anyone in this room. So please indulge me while I tell you about my brother. Gail was named after Dr. Gail M. Dack, who at the time was the world's foremost authority on food poisoning. He was honored with the Pasteur Award, recognizing his many contributions to microbiology, and was our mother's professor and friend at the University of Chicago. She so admired him that she named her son Gail Michael, which was unusual given that the most popular boys' names in 1941 were Robert, John, or James. Gail embraced his unique name even when mail came addressed to Miss or Mrs. Gail Pratl. And I can relate, having received calls from Mr. Bernie Kohl. In 1950, our family moved to Lisle, which, although only 25 miles from Chicago, seemed like a trip back in time. Instead of parks and playgrounds, there were farms, woods, creeks, and quarries for entertainment. I spoke the other night with one of Gail's childhood friends, and they said that growing up in Lisle was great. Parents didn't schedule kids with music lessons, dance, sports, etc. The kids made their own fun. Mom sent you out to play in the morning, never asked where you were going, who you were going with, or what you were going to do, because you didn't know yet. You'd scout out the other kids in the neighborhood and go from there. The only provisos were, don't talk to the hobos down by the railroad, don't get in trouble, and be home for dinner. Gail attended St. Joan of Arc School, which consisted of 5 classrooms in the church attic. Like all the boys at St. John's, he was an altar boy. His high school years started in Naperville. Lisle High School wasn't built until 1958. And as one of the first 2 classes, he took pride in the fact that the students were able to pick their own mascot and school colors. He quickly immersed himself in all things sports and school activities. Being 8 years my senior, growing up, we didn't spend a lot of time together, but I recall the time he took me to the Tivoli Theater to see the Three Stooges in orbit. It wasn't because I wanted to see it, but more like he did, but didn't think it was a movie to take a date to. You know, I still don't get it. What is it about guys in the Three Stooges? My husband still watches the Stooges on Saturday morning. Gail took me many places, usually because Mom told him to, most notably to school. One morning before he dropped me off, he gave me a funny look like I had cooties or something. I thought he was just being a smartass, but it seems I had come down with the measles. And the rash became apparent in the later days, so he took me home and he avoided me for the next couple of weeks. And when he had some really cool cars, especially his '59 Impala convertible, silver with a red and white interior. Riding in his car, I learned that slamming the door came with consequences. My husband Bob has the same affliction. I can honestly say we never fought, at least not to the point of bodily injury. Perhaps it was because of our age difference, or maybe it was due to family circumstances that separated the household. But I prefer to think that it was because he was a good brother. He didn't usually pick on me, but he did call me Farina when Mom fried my hair with a home permanent. You might remember that Farina was Buckwheat's little sister. I always admired how gregarious he was. He had a remarkable ability to tell jokes, and his timing and delivery were spot on. I don't know where he got his material, but every time you saw him or talked to him on the phone, he had a new joke. He always made Dad laugh, but Dad, like me, could never remember the punchlines to retell them. I was a shy kid and always wanted to be more confident like he was. As we got older, we spent more time together, but never really talked much about serious things until the last few years. Gail experienced much heartbreak and tragedy in his life, but always looked forward, not backward. A lesson we all could benefit from. Mom always told us to accept what we cannot change, muster the courage to change what we can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. Gail's first job was working the counter at the Lyle coffee shop downtown. After school, it helped him develop many lifelong friendships because he came to know nearly everybody in town. I guess you could call it a local hangout. Those connections paid off as he parlayed his salesmanship skills into selling coffee cakes in college. Dad was a baker, and early on Saturday mornings, he'd descend into the bowels of our basement and churn out dozens of coffee cakes. The best sellers were apple and almond. Prune, not so much. Gail would package them, load them into the trunk of his car, and make deliveries to customers he had previously taken orders from. They were delicious, and it didn't take long for him to develop a reputation around town. I'm sure our basement wouldn't pass the health department inspection by today's standards, but at just 50 cents, what customers didn't know didn't hurt them. Sales seemed to be something that he was good at, which led him to a career in retail at Sears and then insurance when he retired from Allstate. His sales manager position at Sears proved to be invaluable to me when I got my own apartment. He snagged floor sample essentials for little to no cost that helped me get started. We never had a color TV at home, and I was excited about getting one. Even though it was only 19 inches, it was larger than the black and white ones the folks had when we were growing up. Gail complained when Mom bought a grandfather clock instead of a color TV. He and Penny came to Mom's usually on Sundays. They often dressed up. Gail wore a suit and Penny a dress with killer 5-inch high heels. Those were different times. Nowadays, jeans and a clean t-shirt seem to fill the bill. After dinner, Penny and I would do the dishes, and Gail would sarcastically go into the living room and say he was going to watch the clock. Scott, where are you? Remember when you told me that if we didn't get a larger TV, you wouldn't come back the following Christmas? Well, Diane hosted that year, many years after that. But we kept that same TV until 2008 when we moved to Michigan. Now the torch has been passed to you and Sue. We look forward to many dinners because Sue is a great cook and you have a large screen TV. Many of Gail's early friendships still hold today. Some of you were here this afternoon. Rich used to go on vacation with us. And Jim's been a lifelong friend and also happened to be the local barber and cut Gail's hair. And Gloria, who is not able to be here today, was Gail's first girlfriend and also Ralph's and my babysitter. When Gail lost everything in a fire, Gloria photocopied their entire high school yearbooks. That's a good friend, and she remained one all these years. Excuse me. One summer when Gail was in college, we met the Porter family at the lake. They had a boat, and that's where Gail, his friends, and our uncles learned to water ski. When we arrived back home, Dad got the idea that we needed a boat of our own. He ordered a set of plans from Popular Mechanics, and that winter, he and Gail built a speedboat in our basement. They steamed, soaked, and bent boards for the hull, fiberglassed it, and stained the mahogany deck. It was 16 foot long, 6 foot wide, and quite an accomplishment for two people who had never undertaken such a project. More importantly, it provided a father-son bonding time, and when completed, fun for the whole family. Now you might be wondering how they got the boat out of the basement. Well, fortunately, our one-car garage was under the house, and there was just enough room to back in and maneuver a trailer in. I have no idea how they got it on the trailer, but there's a picture of the boat here somewhere on one of the tables. It was such a success that Dad decided to undertake building a camper trailer, which I think Scott covered pretty well. When he passed away, they requested that Gail remove it from the campsite, and that's what him and Jim did, and Jim went into that. He and Jim hauled it away with the Cadillac, and rumor has it that when they passed through town and hung out the window, Jim hung out the window shouting, "The circus is coming." When visiting our dad, I often made unannounced stops at Sears to see Gail. If he wasn't in the store, I knew where to find him. The Downers Grove coffee shop was around the corner, and he seemed to have an affinity for coffee shops. He related a story about going to one near closing time where they poured him a cup of urn cleaner. Fortunately, the mistake was caught before he drank it. After that, I imagine he limited his coffee shop stops to normal business hours. Coincidentally, he met two of his wives, Penny and Barbara, at coffee shops where they worked. What's the difference between Starbucks and a coffee shop? About $6. The local coffee shop was like Cheers, a place where everybody knew his name. Gail loved sports and was a lifelong Bears and Cubs fan. He excelled as a pitcher on his high school baseball team and was invited to a major league tryout, but the date coincided with his military draft physical and he had no second opportunity. He was equally proud of the National Bowling Conference ring he was awarded for a perfect game, but his first love was fishing. He grew up fishing with Dad on family vacations to northern Wisconsin, and the thrill of that big catch, or small, never left him. Our living room decor was mid-century modern taxidermy, and Gail's largemouth bass held a position of prominence on the wall. Eventually, he bought a cabin around Minocqua, Wisconsin, and when there, it was his happy place. He enjoyed many days on the lake with family and friends, and walks down to the local bar to catch up with the resort regulars. Age took its toll on his health, but every time we would talk and ask how he was doing, his answer was always the same. He said, "I'm fine." You knew he wasn't, but he seemed to accept his limitations and didn't waste words complaining about them. I spoke to him a few days before he passed, and he told me that he and Barbara were in Iowa at the casino. He was having a great time, and he sounded happy. The last few years, his travels were limited due to health and COVID, so it was a welcome treat for them to get away for some fun. I'm thankful that our last conversation was a good one. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Barbara for her never-ending love, devotion, and sacrifices and care she showed Gail. Were it not for her, he would have succumbed to his ailments much earlier. She gave him a reason to keep fighting on. Scott called her a saint, and I have to agree. So, rest easy.